We're really excited about this video today because this is taking us back as well as being able to share with you our travels through Portugal and kind of where it all started for us, because this is where we started our travel adventure on a trip, not full-time travel, but on a trip to Portugal. And if you follow our channel, you know how high Portugal rates for us, and there's reason behind that.
Yeah, you know, we've been back to Portugal since this trip, and it confirmed the fact that we love Portugal so much. Now, we went on this vacation about 6 months after we'd started dating, so that says a lot right there all in itself. But we had such a great time that we're sitting here now doing this video 3-4 years later.
Right. Now, when we are sharing these locations with you, this is going to be in the order we traveled to these locations. You can absolutely mix these up and do them differently. And then also, we're just going to kind of give you a suggested amount of time to spend in each location, but obviously you can also change that up as well. If you have more time, spend longer in each of these locations as well. Now, the first location and where we flew into was Porto, Portugal. Now, Porto right away out the gate, just traveling right into the town in our taxi from the airport, just blew us away.
Yeah, I'd never really been anywhere but Mexico and Hawaii, the typical North American type destinations. Europe was a whole new thing for me. And yeah, it was mind-blowing. I was excited from the very beginning.
Yeah, and we had a great taxi driver because he brought us in and he took us down and down kind of a winding street and then stopped at a lookout point for us to go and look out at this. It was like the key lookout point over Porto, so that was really cool.
Yeah, he did keep the meter running. That's fine. That's fine.
It didn't cost that much. It was pretty affordable. Now, where you want to stay when you're in Porto, we stayed on the northern side of the Douro River, and that is where we would recommend staying. You want to stay kind of in that historic district, just like we typically recommend. If you're only going to be in a place for a few days to maybe a week, you want to make sure that you're in that kind of key center area so that you can walk and see everything.
Yeah, that's where all the cafes are, the shopping, the lookout points. That's kind of where all the action is at. You do get a view of the other side of the river, obviously, and all the port houses, which is kind of cool to look at. They all light up at night. Now, I would say the view from the other direction is equally as beautiful, so you really can't go wrong depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, you really can't. The one thing that you do want to prepare yourself for, no matter which side of the river that you are staying on, is very hilly. Yeah. So it is an area where you're going to be putting in a little bit of work to get wherever you are going. But one of the places, so when Brian was mentioning, as far as the things to see while you're there, the other side, so the southern side of the river where all of the port wine,
the wine
stores, houses are at. That is a place you're going to want to spend a lot of time just wandering around because, boy, they are really cool. And that is, you can go in, you can do tastings. And if you haven't had port wine before, it's one of my favorites. I absolutely love it.
I would say if you're not into the wine scene, if you're just not a wino, try port. It's like a dessert wine, and it's fantastic. We love it. Yeah, we drank plenty.
Well, and if you're just not into any of that at all, honestly, just walking around and taking it all in is absolutely wonderful. So you're not going to have a lack of things to just look at and see. Now, when you get across there, you're going over the main bridge, which is an amazing lookout point that you want to for sure take in. Then the other area that you want to make sure you spend time exploring is just the historic district. There was, once again, just a lot to see and do. And when we talk about lookout points, it's one of those things that really honestly throughout Portugal we found that in a lot of places, because it is so hilly in a lot of their cities, that you have these amazing lookouts. So you just kind of want to find all of those, and at each of those little lookouts there's usually a little cafe or something you can grab a cup of coffee and just sit and take it all in.
Yeah, and when you're done doing that, because there will come a point where you've had enough cafes, you've had enough lookout points, you've done your shopping, there are some day trips to take out of Porto. One we went on, which we would highly recommend, is jumping on a boat or a train and heading up into the Douro Valley, one of the oldest wine regions in the world. Great Portuguese wine.
An absolutely wonderful wine. We really enjoyed that day trip. Now, for us, it was an overnight. We did spend the night And, you know, there are plenty of options up there when you're staying the night.
Yeah.
We actually had it as a perk with your work.
Yeah.
So we didn't actually have to flip the bill on that one. So that was really nice. But there's a lot of different wineries up there. And like we said, there is also trips that you can do, just day trips that will take you up the river. We'll include some wine tasting, and we'll put the link below for any of those trips so that you can check those out. That is something that I'd highly recommend doing. A couple of the other day trips that you can do out of Porto is going to a town called Aveiro, and then there's also Braga and Guimarães. Now, we went to Aveiro. We weren't as big of fans of it. Some people very much like it, some people not so much. So you want to check into that and kind of see your thoughts if it's worth the day to go and do it.
They say it's the Venice of Portugal. It's basically about 3 blocks of that. I mean, that's it. We were disappointed, but you might enjoy it.
But some people really like it. And Guimarães, we actually really liked the town. It was a bit of a walk-in, so just prepare yourself for that. We did take the train there.
Yeah,
and
the train station into downtown.
Into downtown. It was quite a ways. So yeah, we just like to make sure that people are aware so that when they arrive there, they're not like, oh, where are we supposed to go?
Where are we? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say there's a lot more history in Guimarães than there is in Aveiro, where you can really kind of take in some of the history and the castles and churches and things like that.
Right. So there was plenty to see and do in Porto, and we would recommend staying at least 2 to 3 nights, and that would all depend on how many day trips that you want to do from there.
Okay, so after Porto, we flew down to the Algarve. Now, it was a cheap, easy flight on Ryanair. It takes about an hour and a half. You fly into Faro. Now, we rented a car as soon as we got there, and we headed west, and we stayed in Lagos.
Lagos is a great place to put yourself if you want to be able to explore the Algarve. The downside of Lagos is that it is at the west side, as far west as the train goes. And so you somewhat limit yourself as far as your day trips because you're only going to be able to go one direction. So the one tip that we do give you when going to the Algarve, which we do not give this tip so much for the other areas that we are going to be telling you to go to, is that you want to rent a car. So rent a car when you get into the airport and just drive to your destination. Lagos was an hour and a half away.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half away. It's an easy drive. Here's another tip. You're going to rent this car and they're going to ask you if you want to get a scanner for the tolls that you're going to drive through. Say yes, because they'll charge you as you go, and it's a lot easier than having to turn your car in and then go into the post office like we had to do. Because we cheaped out. We'll just pay them later. We went to the post office and we ended up paying, I think, $2 or $3 less than we would have if we just would have gotten one of those ahead of time.
It would have been easier.
It would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
It was only $6 or $7 anyway.
We just didn't know. Yeah, now Lagos is a little bit about the town there. We absolutely love it. It's a marina town, so you kind of have the central area of a marina. You have absolutely beautiful beaches, and if you've seen any pictures of the Algarve and the rock formations and the beautiful beaches, you are going to get that here in Lagos.
Okay, so a couple day trips out of Lagos. There's Luge, which is a little community just west of Lagos. It's maybe a 10-minute drive. That's where they have the little tavern that we like so much, the Bull. But there's also a great beach there, some shopping along the beach. It's very, very picturesque. From there, you can go out to Sagres. They call it the end of the world. There's a lighthouse out there. There's some ruins out there. It's very, very surf townish.
Yeah, and this is where your rental car is going to be necessary because, like we said, the train ends in Lagos, and so even to get to Luge and then to get to Sagres, you need that rental car. But also beyond there, like with our rental car, we drove down some of these just kind of small roads that took you down to these cute little port towns that were just super non-touristy and a lot of fun. So we highly recommend that. Now, as far as where to stay in Lagos, if you do choose that location, you really can't go wrong. Just make sure that if you're looking at a map, you stay kind of centralized around the marina area. And I would say that you're going to be next to all the amenities, and everything you want to see is going to be in walking distance. Now, the other place that we would recommend that we stayed in a town actually called Cabanas. Now, for a lot of people, that might be too small of a town. So the place that we would recommend that's right near there, which is a bigger area and more well-known, is called Tavira. And Tavira was a beautiful town.
Yeah, it was the white buildings. You take a boat out to the beach because the beach is on a sandbar. And it's one of the best beaches I think we've been on to this day. The white sand, the blue water, you know what I mean. Great beach. The only downside was you had to take that boat out there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I would say for me that was a bit of a downside because the boat ride wasn't very quick. It was a longer boat ride to get out there. But then as soon as you were out there, if you do want to spend an entire day at the beach, it is the place to be. They have all the amenities out there. They had numerous restaurants and absolutely gorgeous white sand beaches. Now, Tavira is a kind of river little community, I would say,
Yeah.
And so it just had a very quaint, nice feel to it. And outside of Tavira, the places you can go is a little more wide open because it is in more the central of the train line. So the places that we recommend as far as day trips that we really enjoyed was Villarreal de San Antonio is at the very end of the line there as far as Portugal. And so you go to that town, which is an adorable town, and then you can catch a foot ferry across to Ayamonte, I believe it's called, on the other side in Spain.
Yeah, you want to go over there and have a couple sangrias is what you want to do.
Which we did. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And then the other place was the beach town of Monte Gordo.
Yeah, Monte Gordo was probably my favorite of the beach towns because of the beach, not necessarily because of Monte Gordo, but the beach was beautiful.
Yeah, it's
and it was right there in town. You didn't have to take a bus, you didn't have to ride a bike, you didn't have to do any of that stuff. It was right there for you. So that's something, again, if you've watched this channel, you know we like the beaches, not necessarily to get in the water, but just to look at the scenery. It was very pretty. Very pretty.
So really when we're saying go to the Algarve is a very large area, a lot of different places you can choose from. Those are just our two suggestions of places that we have stayed that we feel kind of put you in a place where you can see a lot and get a lot for your money.
From there, we took a train.
Yes.
We took the fast train back up to Lisbon. And I'll be honest, it wasn't very enjoyable.
Well, because you didn't have internet.
Yeah, I didn't have internet and I wasn't feeling very well.
Oh, that's right.
I had the bottle of port the night before and I felt like for whatever reason I had to finish it because we were traveling the next day.
Could have taken it with him.
And I could have just simply put it in my bag and taken it with me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't pleasant at all. But we got there and I recovered by the time we got to Lisbon. And Lisbon, again, we stayed right close to the train station, so it made it very easy.
Right. Now, the best area to stay when you are in Lisbon is just right in the main central area. We are going to show it to you on a map. Yeah. It is the benefits of staying in this area. First off, it's going to keep you very central, like Brian said, to the train station. There's actually 2 train stations in Lisbon, so it's going to kind of have you in between those. And then it's also going to have you on flat ground. And that is really important thing to look at when you're staying in Lisbon because Lisbon is the city of hills. And so if you don't want to be climbing a hill every single time that you leave your hotel to go and sightsee for a little bit, you want to definitely stay in that area.
You definitely want to stay in that area. It's very good point. There's also a lot of cobblestone. Now, if you do want to get a view of the city, there's a lot of those to be had. You can take the trolleys up to them if you'd like, but you can also find a good rooftop bar. There's plenty of them to be had. You can sit there. You might pay a little extra for the wine or for the cheese platter, but you're not going to pay to go up into a lookout point that you might have to pay for. Now, there's plenty of free ones, but we sat at one right next to the
elevator. It's a main tourist point that we kind of suggest just don't do that. People wait in line for a ridiculous amount of time to go up in this and pay money to go up into it. And we went up to a rooftop bar that was right next to it that was actually a little bit higher and got the exact same view and probably paid similar amount of money.
But we got wine and cheese.
And we got wine and we got a little charcuterie platter. So
we actually learned that from a YouTube video we watched. So that was not our idea.
Now, the other thing that you want to do is just honestly wander around Lisbon. Lisbon is filled with a ton of different districts, and every one of those districts is going to bring you something just a little bit different. And so you kind of have the party district, and you have the laid back district, and you have all these different ones. So you kind of want to make sure, like we said, if you stay in that central area down below, you're going to be out of that party district. If you just heard me say that, you're worried about that. But make sure that you just spend the time wandering the streets in Lisbon.
Okay, and if you do nothing else, you have to go and listen to fado music at a fado bar. You're going to get crammed in. You're going to sit with people you've never met before, which turns out to be a lot of fun. Now, I wasn't into, or I'm not into, classical music or fado music or whatever style of music that you mentioned. It's just not my thing. But man, it was awesome.
It's amazing.
We had a great time.
Yeah, it is amazing. I went the first time that I was there, and I remember telling Brian, like, we have to go. And I knew it wouldn't be his style of music, but I knew he was going to enjoy it. And if you don't know anything about fado, what it is it's a very, you're not going to understand what they're saying whatsoever. It's always kind of a sad song. It's kind of a poetry. But the place that we went to, which was so much fun, was a family-owned place. They're all really small little restaurants, and the dad and mom and son were all kind of singing to each other through the restaurant.
Through the restaurant. It's a small place. Now, as many of you know that have watched this channel in the past, I'm a romantic. And it was the absolute most romantic thing that I've ever done.
Not so much.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
But one suggestion on those, and then we'll move on, is if you are going to go listen to fado, make sure that you get there right when the show is going to be, or well before the show is going to be starting, because like we said, they're usually in these small little cafes and restaurants, and they fill up incredibly fast. So just get there early and you will not be disappointed. Now, the other place that you can go see is the castle. You will not miss the castle when you come into Lisbon, because it is right up on the hill and just kind of like the main point that you see when you're in there. From the castle, it's a beautiful grounds up in there.
Yeah, you can walk all over the grounds for free. Now, you do have to pay to get in to see the main part, but you don't need to do that if you don't want to. You can still go up there, see all of Lisbon, and walk through the grounds all you like.
Now, one of the very cool things about Lisbon, I think, and probably why you want to allow a little bit more time in this town, is because there are so many great day trips to do from here. Day trips that we absolutely love. Now, my number one day trip that I really enjoyed was Sintra. Sintra is only a 30-minute train ride from town. It is the easiest train ride because it is actually at the end of the line. So the last stop, you don't have to confuse yourself of where to get off. You just get off at the last stop, and then you're in the town of Sintra. There's a lot to do there as well.
Yeah, it's pretty. They got the castles. They got a lot of shopping again. It's very
picturesque.
It's very picturesque. Yeah. It's like a fairy tale picturesque type.
Yeah, there's plenty to do up there. It's honestly just one of those towns that you can wander around if you want to, but also there are two castles up there. There's one that's a little bit more rustic, and then there's the one that is very well known, and that I'm sure you've seen in pictures, and that is Penna Palace. It is the bright yellow and red, just like we said, you just really can't miss it. We actually preferred the rustic one because it's one where you can just go and wander and walk around. If you do go up to Sintra, make sure that, like we mentioned with the renting a car, you do not want to take a car up there. There are buses that you catch that will take you up to where the castles are at, and then you go in and see those, and make sure you go to the castles. Don't save that for later in the day. Do that early because the lines get long.
First thing, it was so crowded when we got there that we actually didn't get to go in.
No, I had gone in before, and I knew that it wasn't anything that you'd probably care that much.
I didn't care so much about it. You can walk around the first little part of it. I didn't want to stand in line, and it was hot that day, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was very hot.
And I was getting super thirsty, so we decided to skip going inside. Now, many of you might say, hey, you're there, stand in line. You're probably right. I probably should have, but I didn't. But it is a very cool place.
It is a very cool place. Now we move on to the next place, which was your favorite.
Which is my favorite. I like Óbidos. Now, Óbidos is a old walled city. Again, it's just all the cobblestones. It's very fairy tale, picturesque. You can walk along the wall all around what's so funny?
Because
around the town. And again, I didn't do that either. I was still thirsty. but it was really high. It was like 30 feet high, 40 feet high.
He didn't like that they didn't have fences
no
to like
railing.
block you in.
Yeah, people were walking, passing each other. It was only like 2 or 3 feet wide. I just felt like
I went up there and walked it. It was great.
Well,
You can see down inside of the town, but it was a cute little town. We really enjoyed walking around there. It really is just one of those kind of quaint towns you walk around, and we do have some friends that actually stayed overnight there, and they said that it was very cool to be there overnight because then at that point all the tourists are gone, so you kind of get to enjoy it with the lights on, and so that's cool. Now the one thing about Óbidos is that it is not as easy to get to as these other day trips that we're telling you about. We did catch a bus. The bus wasn't totally easy to find. So I think that I would highly suggest going to Óbidos, but I would suggest doing a day trip there. We will link one down below. That just makes it very simple because that was the one downside is it wasn't
We went on
easy.
our own, and the bus station was easy to find. First of all, we had to take a taxi to the bus station. We got to the bus station, and there's literally 300 buses coming and going, and we have to find the one that's going to take us to Óbidos. So that was the confusing part.
Yeah.
We found that it happened to be across the street.
Not where all the other buses were. So
it is easy. It is, you are able to find it, but it's not cut and dry. So that was the one downside. I would do a tour.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way.
Yeah.
Now the other day trip that we would highly suggest doing is going to Cascais. Cascais is located about 20 minutes by train just outside of Lisbon. Very easy. And just to remember, there are 2 train stations in Lisbon. So you want to make sure you're going to the right train station. This is the one that's down by the water that you're going to go to. Now it takes you to a very pretty little, I don't know, port town, fisherman village style.
Yeah, the same type of thing. The bars, the restaurants, the cafes, but it's all about the view, and it was pretty remarkable.
Well, and I think the one thing that stood out about Cascais was that all the buildings are white, and so it has that a little bit different look than we were finding in some of the other places we had been.
Now there was one other trip we were going to consider doing, but we didn't because we didn't have a rental car. It was going to be a 2-bus transfer type of thing, and we didn't want to hassle with that, and that's Nazir. That's where you see the world famous 100-foot waves with the surfers and all that. You've probably seen pictures or videos of that. Now, those waves are only there in November and April-ish, and we weren't there that time of year, so we decided to skip it. But if you're renting a car and you're there those times of year, that might be a good option as well.
Yeah, and we were watching while we were there because you can still get some really cool waves, and we were watching the weather forecast because we were like, okay, we'll make it happen if it turned out to where we could see some of those waves, but we didn't have any weather come through anyway.
Didn't work out for us,
it didn't work out, but it's a place still on our list that we want to hit. Now in Lisbon, we highly recommend that you at least allow yourself 4 nights. Now we hope that this just kind of gives you an idea of a plan to maybe just start, I guess, planning your trip to Portugal. Like we mentioned, you can absolutely switch these up, put them in whatever order works from you. Maybe you want to end with the Algarve, so you end on the beach, and and just add whatever days that you need to where you need to.
Yeah, I would say the only thing we would have done differently is stayed in the Algarve an extra day or 2. And stayed in Lisbon an extra a day or 2 less. But other than that, I think we did pretty good.
Yeah, and when he says stay in Lisbon less, we highly suggest that you allow about 4 nights. And you can, like we said, with any of these places that we talked about, adjust your time according to how much time you have and how many of these day trips that you want to go on. But we do just really hope that this whole, just kind of giving you an idea of what we did, might give you an idea of how to plan your vacation.
Yeah, we love Portugal. We plan to go back and hit some of these destinations a second time relatively soon.
Hopefully very soon. All right, we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.